everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered on our new unpredictable schedule. Just like the news is unpredictable, we like to echo that in our product. I am Mary Katharine. I'm here with my co-host Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We got a lot going on in the news. Who knows how dated this will be by the time it comes out? We're trying. We're going to do our best to stay on top of it. We'll, of course, talk foreign policy, Iran, Israel, ceasefire, maybe, all the things. Also, the New York primary happening today, which will effectively maybe elect the mayor and looks pretty dicey, and new rules from the government on drinking. You know, Vic's got that beat under control. But before we do all that, how's it going, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine. Great to be back on the air again. And I'm sure it was so nice to hear see the reactions from all the listeners who were happy to hear us again last week. And here we are again for our once bi-weekly, semi-weekly. It's like biannual, semi-annual, something like that.
I love that people.
Episodes.
I love that people really we under-promised and over-delivered on the hiatus. Because people,
that's right.
I actually was like, man, we should have laid off for longer because people were like, wow, I didn't actually
get a huge boost in the ratings when you stretch it out. That's as it turns out it works. Right. I'm doing fine. I had one quick a movie observation for you, which is really kind of funny. From time to time, I'll watch movies that my son has not seen that I think he'll find interesting or get a kick out of. On TV, it seems to be The Departed is on a loop now on AMC, in between that and Goodfellas. And he loves The Departed. And it's just the AMC version. So there's certain things that are missing, and obviously the language, but he's really getting a kick out of that. It's such a great storyline if you haven't seen it. But, my son is he's a big hiker, right? And he likes scary movies. So I thought it would be fun or interesting to watch The Blair Witch Project with him.
Ooh, interesting. Yes.
It is. And the question is whether or not it would hold up. And he's willing to accept. I mean, this took place in 1993, 1994. So it really is of a time. Movie didn't come out until later, but that's supposedly when it was found. The other thing to remember about it was when it was in the, when it made the film festivals. Right. There was a good chunk of people who thought this thing was like real snuff.
I know.
Because it's really, the opening, it just starts as if you popped in a tape and you're watching these people in this sort of fake documentary. So people who don't know about it is where a guy and these two girls want to do a sort of amateurish sort of, they're up and coming filmmaker types. And the woman, Heather, wants to do a documentary on the folklore of the Blair Witch Project. It's around Halloween. It's kind of scary, and it takes place in the woods. And what can they find about, horrible stories about missing children from the 1940s, and where are they going to go? Of course, they get lost, and a terrifying ending.
It's called a found footage.
Yes, found footage. Yeah. It's pretty good. I have to say their acting was, I still found it very convincing the way they play themselves as themselves. Two things. Actually, more than two things. One, the movie wouldn't work today, or the storyline wouldn't work today because of iPhones.
Right.
I think unless
you wouldn't have signal out there.
That's the question, right? All of a sudden we don't have a signal for the GPS maybe, or you're in some sort of weird area where your battery gets, you run out of battery.
Look, I hiked Old Rag last week, which is not very far from here. And I didn't have signal for most of that hike.
So it could still work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then my second observation I think still holds, which is they would have been better off had they had a gun. Even firing blindly into the woods, which you're never supposed to do. But, it's the handgun. I'm saying they bring hunting rifles, but clearly they were not gun types. So it didn't work out for them. And the other thing, the legacy of Blair Witch, Mary Katharine, is it actually killed, it had 3 victims of the careers of the actors. No, they didn't do much. And the worst one of all was Heather Donahue. She says, according to the Internet Movie Database, her great regret was using her real name because then she got typecast. And according to IMDb, she has since changed her name. She has quit acting, and she is now a pot farmer.
Oh, well, it's better than the fate of the characters in the movie.
Yes, that is true. Did you see that movie at the time?
I did. So I love scary movies. Sure. I loved them more before I had kids. I'm more sensitive now.
Yes, I agree.
But I loved them as a teenager, right? And into my 20s. And this was like peak scary movie fandom for me.
Okay.
1999 is when
Yes.
it came out.
Yes.
I was like in the demo for this.
Right.
And I don't remember going to the movies often, even as a kid or a teenager. I didn't do it often. I did it for this movie. And the movie theater absolutely ruined it for me. I went to the movie. And because it's found footage and because it's like low budget feeling, we're sitting there and there's this like tick, 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 tick sound. And it's like doesn't feel like it jibes with the movie, but we don't know if it's supposed to be in the movie because this is found footage.
Right.
And then the thing, like, I want to say 45 minutes in, just cuts off.
Oh, no.
And we all sit there because, again, we don't know if this is part of the movie.
Right.
And so we sit there for a while, and then all of us are like, I don't think this is real. And this is where you need leadership, by the way.
Yeah.
Someone
has to go upstairs.
Someone got up and was like, we need to talk to somebody. I don't think this is how the movie's supposed to work. Sure enough, something had happened with the projector. That was the tick, tick, tick. That was the reason it went out. And at that point, you're really taken out of the moment. And so I never really got to experience.
Oh, that's horrible.
The Blair Witch Project. What I did get to experience was like an $8 voucher for Regal Cinema or something. Yeah. That was my prize. They probably gave us free popcorn or something.
That is a terrible way to experience it.
I will say Blair Witch Project was renowned for its cutting edge guerrilla marketing, which was on all sorts of chat sites that were in their, very early stages
nascent
at this time.
Internet.
Yeah, nascent internet. Everything pointed to the website, which, you didn't go to websites very often in 1999, but everything pointed to the website. It
took a while to get it. Yeah.
There were missing posters of the people involved that were in the real world and marketed on these sites.
Good. That's good.
That there was gossip on the sites about, is this real? Is this not? So anyway, Blair Witch Project. That's a good one. I wish I had gotten to experience it as good.
No, and it's pretty, it was particularly, my son really got into it because he hikes and, like, as I mentioned, and he's been to Burkittsville. And so he's familiar with the area and watching that in the woods. And he was like, yep, could totally relate. It's like, I've been in that situation and also now time to get out, or whatever it is. And I'll tell you one other funny thing. I recently saw our friend and Weekend Beacon contributor, Dominic Green, who also writes for the Journal. He was in town. He's from England. He spent some time in the United States. And he said over dinner, why is it that the woods in America are so much more spookier than the woods in Europe? That's an interesting observation, isn't it?
That is interesting. I didn't know we had scarier woods.
Yeah, and I think it's because of 4 words, Mary Katharine. Ancient Indian burial grounds.
Maybe so.
Yeah, they don't have that. I think that's what, but he said it's just so much spookier. So there you go.
Well, we also, had our own form of like guerrilla warfare during the Revolutionary War, where there are a lot of people in those woods trying to take out British soldiers. So
terrible things.
Yeah, I guess we do have spooky woods.
It is very spooky.
Yes. How? USA, the spookiest woods.
Yes, right. We even have the spookier woods.
Yet again, we're out on top. I don't know. I think Russia woods would be very scary.
Yes. You mean, yeah. I mean, okay. Not even going there.
We're not doing it.
Too dark.
We're not doing it.
Mary Katharine, how are you?
I'm good. I know we're already we're flooding the people with our chit chat.
The Blair Witch Project.
People are like, the news is breaking right now.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Okay, but we have to talk about this.
Yes.
Which is, do my toddlers know that they're part of the programming now? Because they seem to be manufacturing storylines at this point. Because you think to yourself, again, I know you guys think I'm crazy because you're like, how could she not have cleared everything out of that room? I swear to you. As much stuff as we can get out of that room is out of that room.
Yeah, the Desitin thing was really the icing on the cake, shall we say.
We've cleared out the drawers. I'm even trying to figure out, maybe I just put their dresser in another room so that they don't do that. But that's not very harmful for them to throw their clothes around. That doesn't bother me. The last thing in the room is the vent cover. Okay? And I told you they like to put stuff down the vent. So in the past, they've removed the vent cover. I even sent you guys a picture from the baby monitor of my kid asleep on the floor next to the vent cover like it's a stuffed animal.
Yes.
It's his best buddy.
That was a good one. That was insane.
So last night there was a ruckus and Steve goes in there and everybody shortly after that goes to sleep, but he pulls, so nobody was like, deeply harmed. So he pulls the vent cover out with him. He brings it with him, and he's like, they were throwing this into the upper bunk. And I think mostly the little boy was throwing it into the upper
Those
bunk.
sharp edges. It's metal.
So this morning, and I was like, gosh, do we need to like, this is where my problem solving goes. Like, do we need to just 3D print like a foam vent cover so we can put it there? I mean, like ridiculous things going through my mind. Anyway, we're figuring out what to do. I guess we just need to secure it to the floor is probably what needs to happen, and let them figure out how to get that undone, which they will. Anyway, in the morning, they come out of their room, and my little girl, I look at her, like the top of her forehead, and there's a little cut there. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
He got, and I'm a terrible mother because
He nicked her.
He nicked her. It's very light, but I am a terrible mother because I was like, oh, this looks minor. Also, what a throw.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he's 2. He's
That's
a little
good.
over 2.
Yes.
It's several feet in the air. The vent cover's not that light. I'm just saying there's potential there. That's all I'm saying.
All sorts of possibilities.
Yeah.
Could be discus.
So we will be disarming him.
Maybe he's trying to tunnel through the shaft, like
the Shawshank situation.
Yeah. That's right. Escape from Alcatraz or something.
He's going to escape and end up in the laundry room.
That's right.
Ha-ha.
I could. Yeah.
It's fine.
You know
They'll
what?
be fine.
It's funny when you think that maybe they're onto you and they're trying to now do it as a thing.
They're programming the pod.
Yeah, it's going to, their antics will turn into America's Funniest Home Videos. Where after a while, it's like, wait a minute, I think this thing is fixed. They know what's going on. This was no accident.
You can't get any money off
The cat did not fall off the TV by chance. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Let's get to the news, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a story to tell about the news.
Oh, yes.
I was on special report last night, so I was at Fox at the Bureau, and JD Vance came into the Bureau to talk about the strikes on Iran. And as he was sitting down to do the interview, I did not see him aside from getting cleared out of the hallway by Secret Service. They put us all in various places, and then he went through the hallway to do his interview. I was hopeful that he might stop and chit chat on the way out, but he did not. I'm sure he has things to do. Anyway, he goes to do special report. I'm sitting in the makeup room, and he gets, as he's sitting down, the Truth Social about the ceasefire breaks.
That just answered my question, by the way. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a secret national security memo letting him know ahead of time about the ceasefire.
Nope, it was not. And he said, as he sat down, and Brett Baer reads the Truth Social to him as he's sitting down, and then he responds. He says, well, yeah, we were discussing it at the White House as I left, but we didn't have it nailed down. I was hopeful that we might, and perhaps we now do. So at that time, the announcement was that Israel and Iran had come to a ceasefire agreement that would start over in the next 6 hours. So there was going to be some shooting done before
get in
happened.
your last licks.
One, I will say, quite a scoop for Brett Baer.
Yeah.
Nice live TV moment.
No.
Also, as I noted on air when I went on right after the vice president, it must be so nice for Trump to have a vice president he can send out to speak fluently about serious issues on a moment's notice.
Yeah.
That is not something that Biden could avail himself of, and never did, as you may have noticed. So that was the news at the moment. Vance went on to say, we've obliterated their nuclear program. He said that several times. He referred to it as the 12-day war many times.
Which opposed to like the 6-day war, the Arab-Israeli war.
Well, I think the emphasis on, like, we've given this a name.
Yes.
It was 12 days long.
A thing, and it's not 13.
It is now done. He mentioned that many times.
Yeah.
He called it, at one point, he said, we've obliterated the program. He said, this is a very, very big thing. And I was like, I love that. I love that messaging. He also said at one point, I think we've learned that Iran maybe isn't great at war.
Yes, the things that our military analysts, historians in the future, they're discovering this now.
Yeah.
It's helpful, though. It's helpful.
Well, and it's not that Iran can't be dangerous. Of course they can in asymmetrical warfare. Yes. It's just that they've been dangerous that way since 1979.
Right.
So we haven't changed the game except
That
to make
aspect.
them less dangerous on the conventional
That's
weapons
right.
front.
The terrorism part we're very familiar with, unfortunately, and it's been being done, especially when they aid their proxies, from Lebanon, Iraq, wherever.
Right.
But the military capacity, much like Russia versus Ukraine, there's a lot that we know about it, but there's still not until you actually see it in action do you find out how good they are, both the equipment and the people behind it. And in both cases, very disappointing for Iran and Russia to a certain extent. Let me just say this, Mary Katharine. I am very thankful to President Trump for saying that we obliterated Iran's nuclear capacities as opposed to decimating it.
Right, right.
This has been driving me crazy. We do it here.
Important editing note.
Thank you. Well,
Yes.
if you removed 1/10 of their capability, a tenth of their capability, then great. I guess that is accurate. But now
I think we did more than that.
decimated. However, it's a losing battle for me and for others. It now means wipe out. Somebody got decimated. I got blown away. And we use it. We use the language here, and I don't even have the energy anymore. So that's it. I'm done. But he was very angry this morning, Mary Katharine.
So yes. So what happened briefly
Yes.
after this appearance by J.D. Vance was that then there was some suggestion that Qatar had agreed to this ceasefire on behalf of the Iranian regime and that it wasn't actually going to come to pass. But then there was news that no, that was the fake news. And in fact, Iran had agreed to the ceasefire. And then as we were coming to the end of the ceasefire or to the beginning of the ceasefire hour, and then past it, Iran was still firing.
That's right.
Because it's Iran.
Yep.
At which
Several
point,
times.
Israel sends jets over
Yep.
because Israel has air superiority over Iran right now. So they send jets back over, at which point Trump has this to say this morning in the Truth Social.
Yeah. Okay.
He says, Israel, all caps, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. A little bit later, maybe in between that is when he was on the lawn talking to reporters. And he got real mad. In fact, we should play that clip real quick.
Here we go.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. When I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
It's funny because he was the two people he was angry at the most it seemed to be Israel and then CNN as it's scum. It's scum, he said. MSDNC gets a mention, and then Iran. And it's the whole two to tango thing. And Israel has had to play this game for a very long time, where they get attacked, rockets launched at it, but because they don't cause substantial damage or they get intercepted, then they say, well, don't respond, because that only contributes to the cycle of violence. So the policy for Israel is supposed to be just to take it and just let these things happen.
Well, and I don't think the president is right. I don't think the president is right to call out Israel's violation of the ceasefire when there was a violation of the ceasefire before that, right? Okay, I disagree with him on that. I understand that he's annoyed, though, because he's got his eyes on the prize. And by the prize, I mean the Nobel Peace Prize.
I was going to say the literal prize, capital P prize.
He really does. And look, he made the call with the B-2s, with the Midnight Hammer, the tough thing to do. He put himself out there. Yeah, and so it is definitely within his right to say the price of the B-2 Midnight Hammer run
is you stop now.
Is that you have to chill. Now, from Israel's perspective, this is no good at all. As I said on Special Report last night, Trump says, sometimes to make peace, you need toughness. He showed his toughness. Yeah. And now I do think there's like a greater chance of peace. But for Israel's like, but I have so much more toughness to give to the Iranians.
Yeah.
And I can give it basically with impunity at the moment. Not that there aren't costs, because there are missiles that do not get intercepted, and those can cause real damage and hurt people. Also, the Iranian regime is not to be trusted and, of course, is going directly at civilians while this is all happening. This is the stage of the game where I do worry a little bit about what are going to be the terms for this ceasefire, that this is still a horrific regime.
Yeah.
I don't want to be boots on the ground. I don't want to be directing regime change, but, both situations are risky. A regime change that makes an unstable Iran, or the regime in place who then gets to rebuild what they have lost. Right. Now, J.D. Vance said on air last night, and interesting because he is of the more restrainer wing of the party, said if they try to rebuild, they have learned that our bombers can be there on a 30-hour round trip without stopping from Missouri and obliterate it, and they will learn that again.
Yeah.
So that's what he said.
So there's a lot of things going on here. There was, of course, the attack, as you mentioned, against Qatar and the U.S. air bases at Al Udeid, right? And the Iranians...
Oh, yes, I didn't even get to
I
that
know, there's
yet.
so many things going on, but that was part of the retaliation that
Right.
they had that was an utter failure. And then Trump, took a victory lap on that as well. And I
because it was very similar to the post-Soleimani hit.
We're just going
It's
through the motions.
telegraphed. Right.
So, to save face, right? They want to save face. As a quick aside, Trump mentions that they intercepted one and they let one get away, a rocket, because it was going in a meaningless direction or whatever.
Right.
The problem with that one is it exploded in space and it freed 3 criminals from the Phantom Zone. Sorry, it's my Superman 2 reference. So you know what? Good job, President Trump.
Danger.
Now you have 3 villains to deal with.
We always knew this was going to be a problem.
The 3 villains dressed in really interesting sort of black 80s style, plasticky looking cellophane-like robes. I don't know what happened there. That was the outfit inside the Phantom Zone, apparently. Okay. All this talk about regime change and what happens next. I was reminded this is me because I think about food all the time. I was reminded of Thomas Keller. Yes, how am I going to bring this into the conversation? Thomas Keller of the French Laundry, when he opened up his second restaurant in New York, everyone kept on asking, is it going to be French Laundry? And he repeatedly had to say, well, it's not French Laundry per se, right? And they end up calling the restaurant per se.
I didn't realize that was the origin of that.
That is
funny.
the origin of per se. And I feel like the same thing. Everyone's talking about regime change. And I'm like, well, it's not regime change per se. What they're doing is laying the groundwork for the Iranian people. Right. I think at this point in time, the West has learned that it's not ideal to sort of import the regime change, if you will. Right?
Right.
It's not like we're going to fly in Shah Reza Pahlavi back into Iran and say, here is your new leader. I mean, this has been done since, I don't know, the British in the 1920s with his grandfather. And then, Mossadegh is still a very sensitive subject. And then, of course, what happened in the revolution. It's the best thing that you could do is lay the groundwork. And by laying the groundwork, what did we do? Us, but more so the Israelis, bombing things like the Basish headquarters, the propaganda broadcast sites, which some people apparently at CNN were still upset about that, and the woman anchor there, Evin Prison, and blowing the doors off that.
Yeah,
this is up to the Iranian people. I don't know, but as you mentioned, what could follow. What we do know is the current regime is very oppressive. It's brutal. It tortures people. It brutalizes. It kills women.
And they continue to have that oppressive capacity there. That's not a weapons situation.
Right. In a perfect world, it would be like in Eastern Europe where you had someone like Václav Havel or Lech Wałęsa come and step in, and somebody who they can turn to for, a democratic change for the better. But I don't know that situation right now in Iran. But we do know that the current regime that had been chanting death to America and death to Israel was not allowed to have a bomb. And this is what Trump wanted to do, is eliminate that threat.
And is on its heels. I mean, undoubtedly at the moment.
We'll see what
there's
a
lot of scuttlebutt about where Khamenei might be.
Yeah. Do you believe, by the way,
in my special ADHD way, I forgot to get back around to the resuming of the ceasefire, which we had this Truth Social from Trump after he was mad on the lawn.
Yes,
I believe this came afterwards because he talked to Netanyahu.
Yes.
Israel is not going to attack Iran. This is not all caps. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
the thank you for your attention to this matter, because he's really president of everyone.
The man,
Everyone.
the man,
Everyone has to do is.
He is one of the greatest marketing minds
Yes.
that has ever existed.
Really.
Thank you
Something.
for your attention to this matter. Will live forever.
He is one of a kind, and really just, you won't, love him or hate him. He is one of the biggest sort of figures of our
no,
time. What did you say? You said this to me recently.
I texted you.
Yes.
He is
What did you say?
improbably
Yeah.
one of the most consequential
Yes.
figures of my lifetime.
No,
Certainly.
it's true.
In American history. I mean, it is remarkable. I was actually thinking about it when I watched him come to the podium after this bombing run, and he's flanked by. So just imagine telling my 2012 self this.
Yeah.
Or 2015, but
Oh,
like
right. Yeah, of course. Back
2013
then,
or
yeah,
so, that Donald Trump will be in his second term as president.
Right.
And in 2015, I was doing CNN hits with J.D. Vance in his hillbilly elegy days.
Yeah.
And we were both quite critical of Trump, but we were kind of on the same page. Where critical of Trump, not nasty about Trump voters. That was our area of expertise. Like,
That's
I don't
right.
hate them like the rest of you do. Let me see if I can explain this. So J.D. Vance, my old CNN buddy, is behind him. Pete Hegseth, my buddy from the Vets for Freedom days, who I've known since I was 26 years old, who was later a Fox host. And then Marco Small Hands Rubio over here, who trolled Donald Trump in 2015 and 16 in that primary, are all standing behind him in his second term as he has bombed Iran with B-2 bombers and MOPS to take out its nuclear program. I mean, what would I have thought?
Yeah, and what would you have thought if you were to tell John McCain that Trump would actually do this? When people got so upset at McCain for making the bomb Iran to the Barbara Ann tune from the Beach Boys, and somebody said, he's looking down on us and smiling or having a good laugh. That's something. Do you think that Trump is really upset at Israel and Netanyahu, or did he just have to go through the motions to look that way?
Yeah, I think he's mad.
I think he's mad for real.
I think he's mad because he was like, this was my thing.
Right.
My thing was that I told y'all to stop.
Right.
And you didn't stop. And this is, look, I'm not going to get on him too much about this, because obviously he did the big thing and he has earned the right to have a say in how this goes. But this is where I do worry a little bit about his tendency to lapse into moral equivalencies in order to get to his goal, which is for things to chill. And look, that's his way. He wants to strike, and then he wants it to be over.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that the American people are fine with, largely, that success doesn't bother them. A nice, clear mission statement, they like that. They don't want to be in a quagmire. He's not interested in any of those things either. So I understand where he is. I do worry a little bit about the parameters of this, but I think so much progress has been made. My friend Carol, with whom I do the Normally podcast, was noting that Qasem Soleimani, before he died, was like, I'm building these 6 proxies. Yeah. And this is how anyone who wants to touch us is going to have to march through all of those before they get to the regime. And lo and behold, Israel did it.
Yeah.
And so from Israel's point of view, I understand them being like, we've done all this work. We appreciate you coming in at the end there with the big hit, but we've got a real chance here. So I understand everybody's angst over this.
Are you confident? I think I am confident about the destruction of the nuclear sites at this point, Natanz, Isfahan, Fordo, that it was decisive when Trump talks about the B-2s.
Yeah, it sounds like, yes. Look, when you look at the satellite imagery, it's like there's just like little hole impressions there because all the damage is done underground, right?
Yes.
And the hope was that the fuel wasn't moved before these strikes. In service of that, they did this really nice head fake with the 2 weeks and then went for it. So hopefully it was not there. I think a lot of people jumped the gun and they were like, haha, they probably moved it and it's everywhere and it's loose. Certainly a concern, but they have even if that were the case, they have so much less capability of doing anything with it at this point. And then I think people kind of jumped the gun because a lot of the intel or a lot of the news that's come out since those initial hours has seemed to suggest that the material itself is buried under the rubble created by the mobs.
Right. The idea that the Israelis let that happen or the trucks left and unbeknownst to them, I mean, they pretty much had Iran wired, as they say, and the Mossad did. And our Adam Credo actually has some great coverage about this. Israeli intelligence actually called high-ranking Iranian military commanders and talking to them in Farsi saying, you need to leave now. You have, 12 hours, get out with your family, because otherwise, we know, we're closer to you than your neck or something like that. And I'm going to assume that they have a firm control over that situation. It might be easier to name the people within Iranian leadership who are not Mossad at this point.
Yeah.
In Iran,
By the way, can we talk about the issue of what do you think about this unabashed profanity in the president's White House lawn discussion with the press?
Well, I guess, that goes to your point of whether or not he really was genuinely upset or annoyed because he dropped that F-bomb. I mean, he's used up profanity in the past, but that was pretty surprising. And it's such an early hour in the morning, Mary Katharine.
And it wasn't hot mic at all. Okay, there are no early hours in the morning for Donald Trump.
Donald Trump true.
Operates 24/7.
Yeah, he's probably been up since like 3. The
man does not flag. No, he really doesn't.
And he's getting on a plane going off to Holland, for a NATO meeting. Yeah.
What a way to strut into the NATO meeting. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be a bigger entrance than like Donald Rumsfeld when he famously was in Europe and said that he had the biggest what out of everybody. She said, and it's so upset I remember a German telling me how so upsetting was that Donald Rumsfeld would say that.
That's telling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
A hit dog barks. So I am torn on the public use of profanity, and I use profanity in my home frequently. It's actually, I use it enough that it's actually surprising that I never do it on air unintentionally.
Yeah.
But there are fines for that. You got to be careful.
Uh-huh.
So I am not averse to profanity, and I think a well-timed S word or F word.
You want to be sparing with
it. Can be effective.
Yeah.
Also funny. That's a real thing.
Sure.
This is why I respect clean comics so much, because it really does make things funny to say a cuss word every now and then. However, I do get they're gonna call me a cuck for this for sure. I do get a little squeamish about just out and out profanity from the vice president and the president, because the vice president tweets a lot of profanity, and I do more than I used to. So I'm decline is a choice. Why do
people use the asterisks, by the way, in those tweets?
I sometimes do that. Because I'm like, this is
there a
rude.
law? Is there a Twitter X law that says you can't? Is that what happens?
I just feel like it soft pedals it a little bit, and I'm like, I'm being kind of rude and gross, but I'm gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right.
But I think in this case, it probably communicated exactly what he wanted to communicate.
Yeah.
And I'm of two minds about this, because I think I'd rather people be straightforward about that sentiment than the hot miking of like telling, was it Cheney told somebody he could go F himself?
Oh yeah, no, I believe that was to Harry Reid.
Yeah. Oh, a perfect person to tell that to.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of admire the openness as well. Like we're not
well, again, with
Trump, around
with Trump, it's what you see is what you get. A colleague of mine, of course, has called the president, has his phone number, and sparingly, you don't want to call that all the time. But I asked him, when he answers the phone, what's that like? Because of course, everybody calls the president, Dana Bash or people from the Atlantic or from any of the major networks, even the networks that he hates, he just picks up the phone. Mm-hmm. And my colleague said that when he answers the phone, it's not like, who is this? The president speaking. He apparently says, hello. Mm-hmm. That's what he says. So kind of disarming and a very sort of accessible, approachable guy. When the camera's not
the
on.
president and I have this in common, because I answer the phone usually quite theatrically. I'm like, hello.
do you answer? Because like Kate will pick up the phone. She'll pick. It's spam. I'm like, don't answer the phone, and she's waiting. And then sometimes there's a 5-second delay. Like, hang up now before the telemarketer from wherever is going to ask you for your credit card information. And then she engages and says, no, we're not interested.
Like, just hang up. Yeah. No, I just hang up. But if it's someone I know. And occasionally I like to play spam roulette, and I'll answer the phone and be like, is this somebody I know? Well, that's what I know.
So, Mary Katharine, let me ask, what do you think is next for Iran? Because I don't think, regime change is obviously not something that's immediately happening. Do they stay in power? Do they leave? What's going to take? What are they
I'm
doing?
actually surprised how quiet the people of Iran have been
Same.
during this, because now look, they're again,
A lot of people headed for the hills. So,
the oppressive infrastructure
Yeah.
remains. The psychological oppression that keeps people from jumping out of line has existed for 45, 46
since
years
79.
at this point.
That's right.
Since 1979. However, there have been flare-ups, plenty of them over the years, and this would seem for them, obviously I cannot be in their shoes, and this is a very dangerous game to be playing, but it does seem like the regime is as weak as it's ever been at this moment.
You would think this was the moment, but
And one wonders if there might... It's interesting because the last flare-up was the young woman who was killed over her hair showing. Was that what that one was? And so there was an igniting moment
yes,
that was
yeah.
this victim of the regime. So I don't know, perhaps there has to be that figure, unfortunately, when they inevitably crack down on whoever starts making noise. I don't know.
Right.
Or some kind of crackdown in and of itself.
That's right. I mean, they there have been attempted uprisings, as we've talked about in the past. The Green Revolution that failed in 2008, and then even there was like a trucker strike prior to the attacks from Israel, but then this thing, I don't know. I mean, does it rally people to their side? But I can't imagine that. Although, I mean, there's some sentiment. I mean, maybe they wait and see what happens next or what the regime does, but we'll see. What about the Democrats, though? I mean, that puts them in a weird spot, doesn't it? Because do they actually want to root for Iran having the bomb? And yay, the Ayatollahs are in power. And they've been all over the place, because on the one hand, they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to cause World War III. And then on the other hand, it's like, you see, Matt Duss, who he would have been national security advisor if Bernie Sanders were president. He was saying that, he was giving credit to Iran for showing more restraint than Israel and America.
My gosh.
And I don't know if it's restraint so much as it is weakness, and that's the best they could muster.
That's the best they could do. Yeah, they are in a bind because they can't say that the strikes were good.
Yeah.
Because that's Trump's decision and bad, and also Marshall, and they don't like stuff like that unless it's Obama doing it over Libya, and then they're fine with it.
Yeah.
So
killing Americans overseas, you don't need a declaration of war for that. So
just droning American citizens. Yeah. So there's that. But then they also can't say that a ceasefire is good, but they also can't say a ceasefire is bad.
Yeah. It's
because
a bad
they
spot
want
for them to be in.
Peace. I don't know what they do. I think they seem to be going after the congressional approval route, which, look, I am open to the argument from my more libertarian and less hawkish friends that certainly an extended campaign needs congressional authorization. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I do not agree that every bombing run needs congressional authorization. I don't think that has been the precedent for the entirety of my life, basically, Democrat or Republican president.
Obama did not seek permission to, kill Osama bin Laden, or as you mentioned, Libya. And people were fine with that. Democrats were fine with that. And, dropping bunker busters to prevent Iran from having the bomb after saying death to America and wanting to wipe Israel off the map. I don't think you need a declaration of war because, again, that requires Congress to deliberate. And these are immediate national security emergencies. And you cannot have everything has to go through like that for an emergency, which, obviously this is.
Did I mention, I may have mentioned on the last episode that I was watching CNN briefly, and they said, well, the thing about the Trump White House on something like Iranian strikes is they don't talk to the same people that, we would talk to, or that a Biden White House would talk to about, the positives and negatives of this, and the theory as to what would happen afterwards. Essentially, like with respect to you, the Georgetown Foreign Service School of Thought. Like they didn't surround themselves with those guys. To which I thought, that's the whole point of Trump. That's the whole point. And the way that he has changed the face of the Middle East during his times as president, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, pulling off the Abraham Accords, now taking out Qasem Soleimani, now doing this. All four of those things were impossibilities, according to that set of people.
You had to kowtow to Iran. It was a very powerful regime, and you didn't want to upset them. But because you never know what they would do. But obviously we saw what they could do. Trump called their bluff. Trump was right. so good for them. I do think the media narrative kind of went to sort of like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We don't know if they got everything. So what was the point of all this? And then now it's the ceasefire deal. But now with Trump being upset at Israel, it's throwing them for a loop. I don't know what they want to do. But I will say props to like people like Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, Josh Gottheimer, the Democratic congressman of New Jersey.
Oh, and even one Adam Kinzinger, who noted good call from the president, I believe were his words.
John Bolton, who is, not very close friends with Donald Trump either these days.
John Bolton's like, regime change.
I know, this is the thing.
I'm like, not now, John Bolton. Not now, John Bolton. We need a different messenger for this.
Yeah, our friend Bill Kristol, jokingly or not jokingly, tweeted out, oh, maybe you should start, it's time to relaunch PNAC, Project for the New American Century. Very funny. I thought it was funny. I'm ready.
The people aren't ready for that joke.
Yeah, no, they're
soon.
not. They're
Too
not,
soon.
They're not ready. So, and they have to figure it's you're in a bad spot when you're trying to root for failure.
Well, this is the thing. And by the way, I do also just want to say, when things succeed as excellently and as clearly and as silently in the dark of night as that bombing run did, it doesn't quite get the credit it should, because mistakes, of course, are the things that people point at and talk about. That's part of human nature, understandable. But these B2s and the MOPs have never been used in this style for the thing they're designed for. And he went for it, and the pilots smashed it, and the technology smashed it, and the strategy smashed it, and just pretty astounding. I just love to watch institutions that we pay a lot of money for do the things they're supposed to do and do them well.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
And F-35 Joint Strike Fighters essentially serving as AWACS planes because they're able to direct the traffic, from way up above and getting the F-16s to do the heavy lifting and then actually dropping the bombs. It's really quite something. And the GBU-57, that's the bunker buster, the guided bomb unit designed by Boeing. I remember during the Gulf War, everyone talking about the Daisy Cutter, that bomb. But this bunker buster is really 30,000 pounds. It did the job. And then, can we just mention briefly the LA Sheriff's County Department?
Please.
Because after the U.S. struck the nuclear sites in order to prevent them from enriching uranium to build a bomb, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had to issue their own statement saying that this was terrible, what Donald Trump had done, and that their condolences to the victims of this attack, and that they're monitoring the situation. And they wanted everyone to know, in case you're in LA, I want to know, how do the sheriffs feel about the bombing of Fordo? I'm so glad they're against it. And then suddenly they had to issue a correction and apology and saying, this does not represent us. Who sent that tweet? And then they just deleted the tweet.
This is the problem with politicizing every organization on the planet and putting dumb lib Gen Zers in charge of the social media, is that some dumb lib Gen Zer in LA who works for the sheriff's department, which can't make him or her or Zer a very popular Gen Z lib, decided, ooh, bombing bad. Yeah. This not peace. Let me tweet that not peace, not good.
Yeah.
Right? That's all it was. It was some idiot. Yeah. And they shouldn't have those people in charge of social media. And LA sheriff's departments shouldn't be commenting on foreign policy.
They might have their hands full on with other things, you would think.
One would think. All right, are we done with
welcome to
foreign policy?
Another hour-long episode on Iran.
I do think there will be a swagger from Trump rolling into the NATO meeting today.
Easily, and I hope he gets a chance. I love the Netherlands. I hope he gets some patat.
Some Delft.
Oh, what is that?
Delft is the
the Delft, the porcelain, the lovely blue and white. No, you said there for a second.
Pick up some Delft.
I thought that was like something you get in Amsterdam.
No,
okay.
I pronounced it very clearly on purpose.
You did. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So, shall we talk about the mayor's race?
Yes.
In New York?
A mayor, because we're in an off-year election, so the only big ones that you have, for example, are coming from New Jersey, the gubernatorial race coming up in November, but you have the New York mayoral election. But more so, like in many Democratic cities, what really matters is the Democratic primary because it's so heavily
Yes.
Democratic.
Super
What
Democratic.
are you making of this? We're talking about, this is like a ranked choice election?
Yeah, it's ranked choice. Like, as Vic said, the Democratic primary, which is happening today, is probably all that will matter because a Republican can't win, or at least the Republican that has been nominated. Eric Adams, who has not had a shining tenure, is running as an independent. He's unlikely to overcome whoever comes out of the Democratic primary. The Democratic primary frontrunners are former Governor Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced,
Yeah.
and Zoran Mandami, a 30-something socialist rich
Yeah, I
kid
believe 33-year-old socialist.
who has promised to freeze rent and make grocery stores government run. It is...
And really tax the rich.
Super tax the rich.
Because that's how you
rich.
keep rich people in the city.
And also explained in depth how globalized the Intifada is actually not a problematic phrase.
No, he cried about
And-
that. Mary Catherine, he cried. We shouldn't even be discussing it.
Yeah. He also was out in the streets like October 8th protesting with the pro-Palestinian / Hamas-loving crowds. So speaking of which, had you gone back and told 2002 me that a guy who was pro-globalized the Intifada
2002, yeah.
and hanging around with people
Yeah.
flying Hamas flags and Hezbollah flags, that the people of New York might elect him
On
to the mayor? Woo!
on Colbert last night, he was on with Brad Lander, the comptroller. They have it's a
sort
real
of joined
ranked choice. It's a
forces,
ranked
right?
choice conspiracy against Andrew Cuomo because the two of them are going to suck enough votes away, I think, from Cuomo. But he was they were on Colbert, and Mamdani finally got around to saying, yes, Israel does have a right to exist, but they have responsibilities as a country.
Okay.
You know, that responsibility is to,
The responsibility is whooping
allow
ass.
itself to get attacked.
And they're
Yeah.
really taking care of that. No, I think it would be disastrous for New York to elect Mandami. I also think that Cuomo deserves no comeback, and it is to the everlasting shame of the Democratic Party that these are the two people who they can muster in a city as great as New York City. I was just there this week. I did the 5 on Friday, and it is a wonderful, insane place.
Yeah.
And I wish for better for it, just like I do for LA. I love to visit LA, and I wish for better leadership than what they're getting. But Cuomo also and the establishment must take some of the blame if Mandami, who is surging right now, pulls this off. Because Cuomo is a guy who has openly detested New York City when he was governor,
Yeah.
who is contemptuous of voters, who arrives unlikable and scandal-ridden and says, lucky you, you get to vote for me. And many people will make that choice, and it's even rational at this point.
Yeah.
I would be clinging to Eric Adams for all I was worth, but that would be my choice. But, they have to take some blame for running someone against this guy who can be overtaken in this way. Also, there is a notable income difference in how voters are leaning. Non-college educated and lower income New Yorkers back Cuomo like 60 to 30
Interesting. Yeah.
ish.
Uh-huh.
And it's flipped for college educated and post grad because
That
he
makes sense.
is a luxury belief candidate.
Yeah.
That's what he is.
No, I mean, really, that, as the kids say, it tracks. So let's assume that in the Bronx, maybe, or in Staten Island, where, Trump did very well, that they're probably going to vote for Cuomo over Mamdani. If you're a Republican operative, you're in the NRCC or NRSC, and you're thinking about the midterms, I imagine a part of you hopes that Mamdani becomes your poster child in New York, but it would be a terrible thing for the city because if he actually wants to, people are joking about the line about true socialism has never been tried before until now. Well, we're going to see what happens if he actually wants to do all the things that you just mentioned.
And the Chicago Tribune had an editorial today saying, hey, if you want to see what it looks like when you elect a socialist mayor, please check out Chicago. That mayor, by the way, Brandon Johnson, has about a 6% approval rating at this point. It's gone down from 12.
Yeah, not good.
It could be really ugly. And here's the thing about all of politics. Zoran Mandami is telegenic and can talk.
Yeah. Oh, he's so cool and everybody loves him the way he rides a bicycle.
Yep. He's appealing And likability is going to get you a lot in politics. So beware of those who have really bad policies but can talk on camera, because they always pose a threat.
I was reminded,
also got a really cool font, I got to say, on the campaign ads.
I was reminded because of Cuomo running about the time his father ran for mayor of New York. And that was in 1977. And it was one of the most brutal Democratic primaries that people talk about. And that was against Ed Koch. The interesting thing is Ed Koch decided to tack right and say he's going to be tough on crime. And that's what New Yorkers wanted at that time.
Right.
I don't know about how New Yorkers feel about things now. I mean, crime in general has been going down in the city, but other things are obviously a great concern. And obviously, Mamdani's ideas are crazy. And the other thing that I thought about in that 1977 Dem primary, so Ed Koch tacks to the right, and Cuomo's volunteers, Cuomo had disavowed this, but apparently the volunteers had been going around saying the chant was vote for Cuomo, not the homo.
Oh.
Yeah, because and it was never spoken about, about regarding Koch's private life, but that didn't work. Koch won.
Didn't we talk about this on the podcast once when the New York Times did a posthumous
for
profile
for Koch?
I think on Koch's private life with that as the thesis.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so gross and disrespectful.
Yeah.
Just like if someone didn't choose to come out in his lifetime.
No, right. And they opened up with it. Yeah,
yes,
they did.
You don't get to out him. I don't know. I don't like that kind of journalism.
Well, we'll see how he does after today, listeners.
Yep.
Okay. We have the most important thing we say for last, didn't we? And this is reported in Reuters. The Health and Human Services under RFK Jr., they're talking about the new dietary guidelines that are set to come out, and that they're going to remove the recommendation that women have no more than one drink and men have no more than 2 drinks a day. Mary Katharine, what is your thoughts?
Wow, it's open season. I think we talked just in time for summer.
It's time for our taste test.
By the way, imagine the dork American who is actually following the guidance.
I got to stop now.
I guess now during the Biden administration, maybe I have fewer drinks because they were threatening to take it down from 2 to 1. Yes. And now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has said I can have as many as I want. Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. No, so that dork can enjoy his summer now.
You know how I abided by those rules, Mary Katharine, which is,
did you?
I would drink once a week and have 14 drinks.
Oh, smart. That's smart. That's just math. That's just good math. I don't care. Like the government, by the way, leave it to Kennedy to take all the limits off.
Because he doesn't drink himself, which is funny. I mean, it's not like his uncle. Yeah.
Different vibe. But, maybe this is the government saying you can make your own decisions about this.
That is what I'm thinking. It is about everybody is different. As you know, some people can handle more, some people can handle less. I personally do not go home and drink every day. So, I mean, I just don't think it would be good for me, for my weight for that matter. But when I do go out, I do enjoy having a few. And weight is an issue about people's weights. I mean, everybody's different. And it forces, there are biological differences between men and women. You cannot non-binary. You cannot non-binary this thing. But at the end of the day, it is about moderation. And you know what I say, Mary Katharine? Moderation in all things, including moderation.
Also, a lot of people are going to want to crack a lot of beers over July 4th post-Iran bombing run. Yeah. I mean, there's a real America feel in the air. I would also note that perhaps this is an adjustment to, I know this is going to disappoint you in the American people, but as younger generations come up, they're getting more and more sober.
Yeah, they're drinking less. They're drinking less and less. A lot of mocktails.
So it may be that the government is like, maybe we don't need to be telling people what to do on this front anymore.
I think that's a good point.
Or it's just like
we smoke less and we drink less.
It's just a sop to the fratty male demographic. Like, y'all just party as much as you want. As many natties as you want.
That's right. After they defended the flag at UNC, this is the least we can do.
It's the least we can do.
Okay, just don't drive drunk.
All right, one last programming note.
Go for it.
I'm on Dana Perino's podcast this week, Perino on Politics. You can check that out. And Wednesday, which is when this will come out, I'm on the Hill doing a fireside chat with Senator Joni Ernst about her work uncovering the insane stuff that public sector unions spend our money on. She's doing a lot of investigations. She's trying to get some new rules into the big, beautiful bill in the Senate version that would require these public sector unions who do their work on our dime to pay us back for it. So I will be chatting with her this week.
You are busy.
Busy, busy, busy. And I got to get my unlimited drinks in per day.
Yes, that's right. Okay, beginning now. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to Mary Katharine Ham's Substack for updates any moment now. I can just feel it.
It's in the air.
Moment. Special thanks again to Phil Wolf for guest producing this episode. And you can follow me still on X at Victory Nomadis.
Yes, check me out at MKHammer on Twitter, at MKHammerTime on Insta, at mkhammer.substack.com for updates, which will come, and episodes, which will come out of nowhere like a B-2 bomber. You won't even know.
No.
And then suddenly it'll be there in your feed because that's how we operate stealth. All right. Thanks so much for getting hammered responsibly, even with these new rules. We'll see you next time.